Hey guys, back with a just a little desktop video here. This is something I haven't really been able to do much of, and I've wanted to since I started doing these more vloggy type videos. It's basically a video response to some comments. A buddy of mine right here, Sharkie626, he's been a subscriber of mine for a long time. We were talking back and forth in comments, and I said I would just do a video so I could explain things a little better for him and not be confined to the 500 character limit on comments, which for whatever reason seems to be going nowhere. There was one comment in particular that we went back and forth a little bit about, just talking, and this was it right here. He mentioned speaking of the scoring system connected with the machine. That is one thing I really don't like about the AMFs. When there's no pin standing, it only detects a strike if a ball is thrown. If you use the reset button or a pin falls late, it won't do that. Whereas with A's and A2s, it has no choice but to set a new rack if no pins are mechanically detected. So this is actually going to be more of an AMF discussion video for once. We'll start off by saying, as he mentioned right here, pinfall data for a Brunswick, whatever it may be, A, jetback, A2, whatever. It's all mechanical. The detector tells the machine what to do based on the deck height and the detector rod and all that stuff. AMFs are a completely different beast when it comes to this, and I'm going to try to explain why it does that. If it detects a pin that fell late and it thinks it's still standing, it sets up nothing. Or, you know, if you reset it through the scoring, at least with the older systems, and there's an empty deck on first ball, it's not, you're going to have to reset it twice. It's not going to spot pins, and I'm going to try to explain why it does that. First, we're going to start off by discussing the original setup, because this is where this comes into play, and then we'll discuss scoring afterwards. I just pulled up, I told Sharky it would be a little bit because I wanted to try to find some stuff which I wasn't very successful at, but I just found the Amf Parts Manual here. First of all, before we look at the respot cells, we're going to scroll up to right here, which is your table wireway assembly. And this is what it looks like on the bottom. Actually, I have a picture from my photo bucket, one of my old machines. Looking here, this is your machine chassis. This is what it looks like looking out over the lanes. And you'll notice this little cover here and all the wires coming in. There's two plugs underneath this cover. This top one here is your high voltage plug, that's the C1, and this bottom one has a lot more wires, thinner wires. This is the C2A plug. This is your low voltage plug. Your cell wiring comes into the chassis through the C2A because it's all low voltage signals. If we jump back here, this is facing the opposite way, looking towards the back. This is a chassis here and the cover from the other side. Those wires from the C1 and C2A, the C2A is basically the ones that we need as far as cell wiring goes. They come down and run across this wireway and come out right in this general area and run down to the table. Now if we jump back to here, you'll notice there's a plug here, and this plug still to me looks like it's not in the right spot. If I remember right, it was between the 4 and the 7 pins, but regardless, it's in this general vicinity. And you'll notice the wireway. The wires come in through here, runs to the 7, and then forward. It feeds the 4, the 2, and the 1. Runs around this way. It runs down. You have your 2, 5, and 8. Or no, excuse me, your 3, 5, and 8. Comes further down, it has a 6 and a 9, and then finally just a 10 by itself on this last little wireway. Back before there was any interface with the scoring and the machine, this is what told the machine if there were pins standing and which ones they were, like the old pindication masks. That's how it knew which ones to light up and tell you which pins you left. So now we'll just scroll back down to the respot cell assembly diagram here. Everything's all broken down. I have a picture somewhere, I believe, where you can really see where the wire comes in. There's this part here, number 25, which is your insert assembly, and this this bolt with a quarter, it has a little 1/4-inch head to it that screws into this, and the cell wire connects to the little tab. There's a stay-con on the end of the cell wire, connects to this, and when there's a pin in the cell, it spreads the fingers and pushes this little screw against the frame of the cell and grounds the cell out, and that completes the circuit. It goes back up to the chassis and it knows that there's a pin there. So that's just the basic description of how AMFs used to, before, without any kind of scoring input, would tell the machine if there's pins standing and which ones. So I think that's a good starting point for all this. So now that that's out of the way, another thing I want to mention is there's no difference in the height of the table, whether there's pins standing or not. It's not like a Brunswick. If there's a strike on a Brunswick, the deck travels uninterrupted on the short stroke, the detection stroke, whatever you want to call it, and it'll stop roughly an inch or an inch and a half short of a full short stroke if it detects pins, because they hit the pads and stop the deck from coming all the way down, etc., etc. That's how Brunswicks detect. AMFs, it doesn't matter. When they go down to respot height, it's always the same height. And you'll notice when the table comes down, like if you see, if your house still has the old masks, or you see it in a video, you won't see any kind of indication on the mask, whether it be a strike or pins remaining when the table runs, until it starts going back up. And the reason for that is because it has to lift the pins off the deck, and the fingers have to spread that little bit so that this little screw here grounds out. And this also adjusts your gap so that it's spaced properly when there is a pin inside of it. With the advent of the automatic scoring and AMFs being so electrical, that's when the shortened cycles came into play. I believe it was the late 70s. Magic Score was their first system that came out. They introduced the MP chassis microprocessor, which could process the information from the scoring and make the machine act accordingly. Basically, on a strike cycle, it would just read a strike and tell the machine it's a strike. Don't run the table, and it would just put the strike light on. The sweep would run. It would set a new rack. Or if there was a gutter ball or one of the corner pins, the 7 or the 10, were picked off, it would tell the machine that also, that there's no reason to run the table, and pick the pins up, sweep, and respot. It would just reverse the sweep back up. So that's that. Also, I'll mention, I just mentioned the MP chassis. This is one from my old center. These are solid state chassis. They came out a good bit before the MPs, but could be converted to act like MP chassis. You'll notice there's some empty slots, and there's only 2 boards. These originally ran with 5 boards, and there was a 6th spot for the spare maker board, which nobody had because they were a real pain. From what I heard, I never really dealt with the 5 boards. They had this 2 board setup when I got to the center. This is the main board right here. This is your MK70 board. The machine will run perfectly fine with just that board. You won't have any shortened cycles, but it's a conversion board, so that you only have the one board. It's got a little like a little daughter board with a ground wire. I think I have a picture of that I can dig up in my photo bucket for you. This second board here is your expander board. You'll notice there's wires going to it and another separate plug coming into it, and also a plug here which runs into the C1 plug. This controls all your short cycles, your sweep reverse, and your short and strike cycles. So this is a converted solid state chassis that pretty much acts like an MP. The only difference being MP chassis can override the machine time delay. These won't. These will still go through the time delay, but it'll still shorten the cycle, and the table won't run on a strike cycle and that kind of stuff. Anyway, the reason for what you had mentioned here excuse me, about the machine's not detecting strikes, that's mainly due to the short cycle setup with the scoring. Ours wasn't set up like that. We actually still had our cell wires in place, but a lot of centers like to do that if they can get the shortened cycles in, to save wear and tear, so the table's not running when it doesn't have to, and also so that they can eliminate the cell wiring. There's, like I mentioned, there's a wire for each cell, so you're looking at 10 wires per machine that go all over the place, and they can be a real pain sometimes. So if at all possible, most AMF centers really try to eliminate those, and being so electrical, the chassis can take information from the scoring and make the machine act accordingly for that. So that's part of it. Most of the setups require right up in here where the table comes down. There's actually a terminal board where all the wires from the table cable plug into, and most of the setups require you to ground the cell right in this area, so that this way, if the machine does not receive any pinfall data from the scoring, be it late or for whatever reason the scoring's malfunctioning and it doesn't send any information, and your cell wires are gone, it's not going to spot on top of pins. Because if you cut and remove all of your wiring and the machine doesn't get a signal from the scoring, it's going to wait. Once the time delay expires, the table's going to run, and if there's no wires hooked up, it's going to run a strike cycle every time, regardless whether there's pins there or not. So most of the setups have it that way, and that's why you're experiencing what you are. When the machine does receive the information from the scoring, it'll override that grounded cell and spot pins. Our setup was a little bit different. We didn't have any cells grounded. We still had our cell wiring in place, despite the fact that we had short cycles. And so our machines, there's actually a jumper on the expander board where you can set it to have a cell grounded at all times or not. Since we still had our wiring in place, we set it not, so that it would, if the table went to feel for pins, and which didn't happen very often, but when it did, if there weren't any pins there, it would run a strike cycle, just like it used to back in the day before the scoring had any kind of input as to what the machine did. And I'm discussing all this, I'm basing this off of 8270s also. I know with the 90s, for the most part, if not completely, they didn't even come with cell wiring, because by the time they came out, most centers had it. I'm sure there was some setups where there wasn't scoring, and they probably just did what most of the centers that still have cell wiring do, and that's basically they'll run one single wire all the way through and just branch it off onto each cell, so that they only have the 10 connections at the cells and one wire to worry about. which makes things a lot easier. But that's basically the reason why it's doing that. Same deal when there's a pin that falls late, the scoring is telling the machine, hey, there's a pin here, you're not, there's a pin left, respot it. So even if that pin's not there, the scoring is telling the machine it is there, and it's not going to spot pins. Even our machines with the cell wiring still in place, if a pin fell late and the scoring read a pin, it would override even our cell wiring. It would ground one of the cells, and it would set an empty deck if a pin fell late. But hopefully, for the most part, that should answer most of your questions. Like I said, the Brunswicks, they're mechanical, so there's really not shortened cycles for them. Some of the newer scoring, I believe it's the Cubica system. If you have a new pin solenoid in place, which the older Brunswick scorings used, it was basically just a solenoid with a little hook that would pull on the standing pin selector and put it over the second ball. I've seen it in videos, I've never seen it in person. It's actually pretty cool. It just keeps it doesn't really save much on cycle time, but it keeps the deck from running unnecessarily. It'll read a strike and fire the new pin solenoid, put it over the second ball, and the deck will get held up on the hook, and it'll just sweep and set a new set of pins. The gearbox still has to go its full 360 degrees, so you're not really saving much time-wise, but it's still pretty neat to see. It's something different. But hopefully that answers your question. As far as a couple of other little quirks with the older AMF scoring, mainly I dealt with the AccuScore Plus myself at my old center, which I actually liked a lot. It was a really good system. It was very solid. But Magic Score did much the same thing, and that is that if you hit the reset button, or on AMFs they're called the 10th frame switch, because they were ideally only supposed to be used for a fill ball on the 10th frame before there was scoring. But if you press that, it will score. And there's also, like AccuScore Plus used to do it through the keyboard, or Magic Score, which preceded that, there was a button, usually right on the console itself, which would run if there wasn't a full rack or you needed to reset the machine without it scoring. It ran a respot pins only cycle, or RPO as we call it. It's basically just a circuit that would tell the scoring, don't score this, the machine's going to be reset, but it's not meant to be scored. So, and same deal with that. If there was an empty deck for whatever reason, if the setup was that one of the cells was always grounded, you'd have to do it twice. It would feel for pins and set up nothing and go to second ball. And then you do it again, and it would spot new pins. But hopefully that makes a little more sense. It's a little easier to try to talk through and show you some pictures and diagrams and stuff like that. So hopefully that makes sense and answers your question. I appreciate the comments as always, Sharkie. It's a pleasure discussing it with you, and if there's anything I skipped, or anything you don't understand what I'm trying to get across, then just let me know, and I will do my best to further explain that. But this is good. This is, like I said, this is one of the reasons I wanted to start doing videos like this, so I can interact a little bit better. It can be difficult to try to get my thoughts across in 500 words with the comment system. So, like I said, hopefully that answers your question. If not, just let me know. We'll get further into it. And thanks again for the comments. Anyone else who's watching, I thank you for watching, and thank you for your support and likes, comments, subscriptions, etc. Like I always say, I appreciate it very much. And feel free to leave me a comment, or if you have any video requests or anything like that, whatever's good for you. However you would like to leave a private message, video comment, channel comment, etc. is fine, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. I guess that's about it. Alright guys, thanks a lot. I'll see you soon.